If you're given a project and you need to decide that whether you should accept the project or reject the project, you must have some decision criteria or selection criteria, whatever you say. Based on that, you take your decision. So all these selection criteria to decide a project to be accepted or rejected are given in front of you. So you see under the selection criteria table, there are PBP, ARR, NPV, IRR, and BCR. All these are selection criteria. And in the right side, you see there is a accept and reject table. So when you should accept it, when you should reject it, you get your answer from these tables. Now you may ask that why first two criteria, that means PBP or ARR, these two are in orange background and the rest three are in blue background. So there is a certain reason behind that. I will tell you later on, and you'll get a lot of interesting factors regarding the selection criteria process. And you'll have a little bit confusion when I'll be explaining you all this selection criteria process, but you'll get all of your answers at the end. So don't skip any moment, just watch and try to understand. And if you have confusion, so you can always ask me in the comment section. I'll reply when I'll be back. Okay, so let's start with PBP. First selection criteria. What is PBP? The full form of PBP is payback period. So when you should accept the PBP, so before that, I just try to give you a basic explanation what is PBP. So payback period is the time when you get back your invested amount. That means that if you have invested 10,000, so that's your cash outflow. So each year you'll have some inflows. Okay, so you want to know when you get back the whole 10,000 from your inflows. So from year 1 to year 5 or 6, how many times are you gonna take, so you have to calculate that. So that's PBP. So you should accept the project when PBP is less than target period. That means that if your target period is 10 years and you get your PBP after calculation is 8 years or 9 years, so you should definitely accept the project. Now obviously there is a calculation process for each of the selection criteria, and later on I'll give videos on each of the selection criteria, how to calculate them. So let's try to understand all this process first, when you should accept and reject, then we'll see the calculation and the formulas. Okay, so try to understand, when your payback period will be less than your target period, then you should accept the project. And when it will be the opposite scenario, that means that payback period is greater than your target period. So you have targeted that the payback period should be 10 years, but after calculation you get that the payback period is 12 years or 11 years, then you should reject the project. Okay, you can. Now ARR is accounting rate of return. Full form of ARR is, now you should accept ARR when the calculated amount will be greater than your target rate, opposite to PBP. Okay, so you should accept it when ARR rate, accounting rate of return, will be greater than your target rate, and you should reject it when ARR will be less than your target rate. Now let's move forward to NPV. Full form is net present value. NPV is the best decision criteria. Okay, so why, I will tell you later. Okay, when you should accept the project, when NPV is greater than 0. So after the calculation, when you get that your NPV is greater than 0, you accept the project. When NPV is less than 0, you reject the project. Okay, IRR. IRR's full form is internal rate of return. So you should accept the project when IRR is greater than cost of capital, and you should reject the project when IRR is less than cost of capital. Fine. Now let's move forward to the last selection criteria, which is BCR. BCR's full form is benefit cost ratio. You should accept BCR when it will be greater than 1, and you should reject BCR it will be less than 1. Now let me give you the answer of my first question, why the first two criteria are in orange background and rest three are in blue background. The reason behind that is the first two criteria are called the non-discounting criteria, and that's the biggest limitation of these first two criteria. So on the other hand, the last three criterias are called discounting criterias, and that's why these three criterias are more credible and more dependable. Okay, now as I mentioned you that you may have some confusion regarding the selection process. So assume that you have this confusion when I was explaining. Assume that you will have some questions for me. Now let's start. You see that the selection criteria of NPV, when NPV is greater than 0, we accept it. When NPV is less than 0, we reject it. Now you may ask that when NPV is equal to 0, what are we gonna do? Because there's no answer of that question. Then what are we gonna do when NPV is equal to 0? Then just let's go back to BCR. When BCR is greater than 1, we accept it. Okay, fine. When BCR is less than 1, we reject it. But what we gonna do when BCR is equal to 1? There's no answer in this slide. Okay, the answer is in between these two, NPV and BCR. I mean to say is that when NPV will be equal to 0 or BCR will be equal to 1, you go back to IRR, or internal rate of return. Okay, then when IRR says that is greater than cost of capital, straight accept the project, and when IRR says that is less than cost of capital, straight reject the project. So though NPV is the best selection criteria, but when it will be equal to 0, you have to go to IRR. But when it will be greater than 0 or it will be less than 0, you don't need to go to IRR. Okay, because this is the best selection process. But when it will be equal to 0, you must go to IRR to find out whether you should accept it or reject it. Another thing is like NPV and BCR are quite similar. Okay, the basic difference is when we try to find out the NPV, the formula is inflow minus outflow. Okay, and when we try to find out the BCR, we get inflow divided by outflow. So we'll do the calculation and we understand it properly later on. But my purpose of this video was to make you understand that when you should accept the project or when you should reject the project, and in which situation you should perform how. Okay, when you have any confusion, whom you gonna ask? So you have confusion in NPV, you're gonna ask to IRR whether you should accept it or reject it. So you're having confusion in BCR, you go to IRR. Now the thing is that it will not be straight 0. NPV will never be straight 0. It's very rare, I mean almost impossible to be 0. It will not be equal to 0, but it will be very close to 0. Then you'll have doubts if it's 0 point something. If it's very close, that means 1 or 2. So you can go to IRR and try to understand, like justify your answer, or clarify your doubts if it's very close to 0. It will not be stage 0, it will be 0 point something, it will be in decimals, or it will be a very close. I mean what you have understood, right? What I'm trying to say is very close to 0 or is very close to 1. So if it's 1.02 or 1.34, so you can go to IRR to justify the answer. But if is much bigger than 0, means you don't have any confusion. Like if you don't have any confusion, you don't need to go to IRR. But if you are selecting or rejecting a project very close to 0, you should actually go to IRR for once to clarify your confusion. And that's it. That's all about this video. I hope that you have understood everything, and thank you very much. If you have any doubts, then please ask me in the comment section. I'll try to clear all of your doubts. Thank you very much.